So let me preface that I will not be dealing with the teaser per se. I will be dealing with mainly the controversy generated from the teaser. So what is occurring? Well, some alleged fans of the Ninja Turtles are upset that April has been altered. And to some extent, this may be justified, but we have to be clear about who April is and what she is not. There's a lot of partisanship going on both sides. Some people insist she has to be originally black. Others insist she originally has to be white. But what does the comic book say, and what do the creators say? Well, from my looking at the evidence very carefully and double checking these things over and over again, I think the majority of the evidence points to April O'Neil in the original, which was in black and white, is mixed race. Now, what is she exactly? That is a little disputable. So why is there this confusion? Well, there's a split in two ways. One is that this is a co-creation. The Ninja Turtles were created by two different people, and they had different concepts of April, both in the beginning stages and when they published the comic book in black and white, the later adaptations with the cartoons and the movies. So there's some difference of opinion among the creators. There's also some problems with how April was presented initially and later. So in her initial appearances, she has a very, very different look from April from the cartoon of the 1980s. And there's agreement that there is a very striking visual difference. It seems where people are polarized is they see her as white, and yes, she may look Asian or she may look black or mixed race, but they still insist she looks white. But even Peter Laird, who a lot of people are citing, admits that to Kevin Eastman, April was mixed race. But again, the original conception was she was going to be Asian. April was changed radically when they went from the comic to the cartoon of the 1980s. And now most fans prefer that version of April. I may join them, but that is not the original version of April O'Neil. So we're kind of stuck that people just want to use the 1980s cartoon as the canon. Well, you may want that, but again, April O'Neil originally was a comic book character. And we do find versions of April, yes, in the comic where she is black or tanned or non-white. You may not like that. I may not like that. But that is what the comic book reflects. So we have to go with the comic book because we just can't go with our own, quote, headcanon. Now, some people sincerely may have read the comic book and think, well, to them, April is white. That's nice, but we don't have enough evidence for that to be the canon. We have to go with the creator statements. And there is some confusion there, and that may be legitimate. But again, the majority of evidence does suggest that she's a mixed race woman. What's the exact mixture? That we could go over back and forth. But there's really no evidence that she was, quote, white or a ginger or she looked like the cartoon of the 1980s. That is simply not true. They changed the character quite radically. They've changed the character repeatedly. So this is another change of the character with the Seth Rogen version. And again, I may agree, I don't think this version is a good version. But you can't argue that they're changing, quote, her race again. They've changed her race from the very beginning. So you may still dislike the Seth Rogen version. I may dislike the Seth Rogen version. But you don't want to make it, quote, fundamentally about changing April's race. That's been done since the very beginning. And ironically, these same people want to use the cartoon version as the canon. That doesn't make any sense. It originates from a comic book. So we have to go with the comic book. If you want to use the cartoon version as your canon, that's fine, but you should explicitly say so, and you should qualify by saying, yes, but originally it was a comic book, and the comic book canon may differ from the cartoon canon. But a lot of these people, like Eric July, are simply lying and presenting very selective false evidence. And when they have to back up their claim, all they have is, I'm Eric July. I'll be black. I'm blacker than you. I'm a black man. I see a white woman. Well, nice. So what? You're not the creator of the Turtles. We need to go with the statements of the creators. And a final note, there is some controversy because the colored version of the comic book later printed seems to depict April as a white woman. That's all well and nice. Again, originally this was a black and white comic book. This was an independent comic book. You couldn't afford colors at the beginning. We have to go with the original comic book. And the original comic book seems to establish her as a mixed race woman who's Baxter Stockman's assistant. That is not what is happening in the cartoon version. They made her a reporter, they made her independent of Baxter, and they changed her look radically. There were even separate versions of the, quote, toy of April, with the comic book version and the cartoon version, and there's a clear difference. Again, you may prefer the film version, you may prefer the cartoon version, that's fine, but they're not canonical in terms of the comic book, and that's where we stand. I understand some fans are still upset at larger trends of changing characters, that's fine, but that's not relevant here. You have to go with the comic book history.